following program is part of the Patriot Broadcasting Project, brought to you by the Scene Projects Podcast Network. Welcome into South Dakota Patriot Broadcasting. I am your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is first-term representative from District 10 here in South Dakota, Bobbi Andera. Welcome to the show, Bobby.
Thank you, Bubba. It's nice to be here, and thank you for providing this great platform for all of South Dakotans, and I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Well, and that's great, and it's nice to just get to talk to legislators. It's not something that the everyday citizen gets to do. I don't kind of make the space as a stumping place, right? We're not here to necessarily campaign, but we want to get to know you, right? We want to get to know our legislators and to know the people behind the policy. So let's go ahead and do that. You don't have to start all the way back at the beginning, but why don't you give us a little behind the story of who you are and then why you decided to run this year for representative.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I was born in Parkson, South Dakota, to a family of 7 brothers and sisters. My dad was a controller at Eglin Co-op. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but usually those of us in the Midwest are. And my mom was a babysitter and a school cook growing up. My brothers and sisters actually delivered newspapers and babysat and worked at local businesses to earn money. So I was literally thrown into earning money and managing that money very quickly in my early life. I went to the military after graduation. I was in the United States Air Force. There, I was trained to be a medical laboratory journeyman. After my honorable discharge, I received my Bachelor's of Science from Wayland Baptist University. It is a university in Texas. And when I moved back to South Dakota, I worked at the then Sioux Valley on the night shift. And that was obviously before it became Sanford. Since then, I have worn several different hats. I was part of the lean team at Sanford. I was a laboratory business regulatory manager. I was a lab compliance officer, all at Sanford. And I also decided to get my Master's of Science from the University of South Dakota, go Yotes. And at the present time, I serve on the parking board for downtown Sioux Falls, the treasurer of South Dakota Republican Women Cyberspace, the Armed Forces chair for South Dakota Republican Women Cyberspace. I also run my own consulting business, which is currently on hiatus as I focus on the legislature and continue as the regulatory lead for the company I co-founded, which is Alamaya Health. That's amazing.
So you've been in healthcare or around healthcare your entire adult life. That's fantastic. I think your point of view is going to be very important for the state legislator. I think you're going to consider, just because of your background, you're going to consider things from a different angle than a lot of other people would. You're talking about you're being chairs. You've been at the top of some of these organizations and committees and different things. It seems like for a substantial amount of time already. Is stepping into the legislature just kind of a natural evolution for you to take that next step to making change?
Yes, I believe so. And the reason why I say that is because I look at my particular background, my particular experience as something that you just don't come across every day. As a scientist and as someone who is familiar with what goes on behind the scenes, so to speak, I believe that is a good position for me to be in to offer maybe a different perspective. And also it was very natural because of everything that has happened back, in 2020, 2021, all of that with the COVID scare and everything else. And on top of that, I served my country and I want to continue to serve. This is in my blood. It's in my family's blood. We come from a long line of military people. And this is just part of who I am. And I want to serve the citizens of South Dakota.
Well, I am so grateful, one, for your service and for your family's service and for your continued service to the citizens of South Dakota. I think a lot of our legislature at this point, especially in the Sioux Falls area, is kind of dominated by business people. And not that we don't need business people in these positions, but we need a more, a broader spectrum that we're kind of pulling from, right? We need different human experiences that are out there offering their side of things, and not just all business people that are kind of focused at economic growth over everything.
Correct. I completely agree with you. And, we have so many different types of backgrounds that are coming in to this term. And it's really exciting to see you've got people from all walks of life that are going to be offering their skills, their time, their energy to represent the citizens of South Dakota in the best way that they can from kind of like a grassroots perspective. And I agree. It's time for a little bit of a change here. It's time for a little bit of a change.
Do you feel, 22 new legislators, entering into the legislature this year? I don't know if that's a record, since the inception of our state government, but that's a pretty big swath of new legislators coming in. Does that kind of speak to the broader kind of grassroots patriot movement in general?
It sure does. It's interesting because what I heard when I was out there talking to my constituents, they made it very, very clear that they wanted change. The one thing that they had a hard time with was actually verbalizing that change. They just know they wanted it. And so as we talked, we kind of were able to get on the same page of kind of where I'm coming from and why I'm running. And it was a tough decision to run. It was a lot of work. However, I felt now is the time for that citizen representation, kind of with that different perspective, a more holistic approach through a respect of that centeredness and that neutrality. And that's something that they really identified with. And my constituents made it clear that the government was not doing their job, which simply put, should only concern itself with ensuring the rights of the people, and those rights shall not be infringed. Government overreach and individual agendas kind of overshadowed a lot of things that were happening, and it created some unease with the citizens of South Dakota, regardless of the party affiliation. I mean, I talked to Democrats, I talked to independents, I talked to Republicans, I talked to everybody. And overall, this aligned with my perspective as a staunch supporter of the federal Constitution, the state Constitution, and specifically the Bill of Rights. So yeah, that's why I ran. And I really, felt that I made a really good connection with my constituents here in District 10.
And now the learning process begins of learning how to be a legislator. It's something
Correct.
that another first-time representative, Tessa Schwanz, came on here and shared, and she kind of shared that there's a lot of homework that goes into learning the lingo and the processes of moving into the legislature and making these decisions and making your voice heard. We know that it's not going to be easy. It wasn't easy to get to this point, and it's going to take a lot more work to affect actual change, right? Like getting patriots into these things, into these positions is just the beginning. Like, we're still fighting against a very, the incumbent, some of them call them rhinos and have other terms for them. But, the Republican, party in South Dakota, it's just different than other places, right? Because we are a red state, pretty much across the board. I don't know how many Democratic senators or representatives there even are in our state legislature. So you kind of have the super majority, but there's no way that everyone in that Republican Party agrees with each other. And I think what we're starting to see, I don't want to call it fracturing, but there's definitely kind of battle lines being drawn within the Republican Party. Would you say that you kind of feel that as well in your campaign and now kind of moving into your work as a legislator?
I would say that I see it, yes. I would also say that my personal view, my personal approach is is one of peace and working together and centeredness. But, to kind of go back to what you were saying, so the House currently, 64 Republicans and 6 Democrats. The Senate is about 32 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And we have had this largest Republican caucus since 1952. So we are breaking records. As far as the fracturing goes, I would say that there has been this monolithic type of, movement, I guess you could say, where over a period of time, many of those that were Republicans or are Republicans, they got used to, well, I'm just going to stay at home. I'm going to work. I'm going to raise my family. And since that person is a Republican, I'm going to trust them. This has since changed because there have been these, large businesses. There have been agendas. There's been money. There's been corruption. Now, how much of that is happening in the South Dakota legislature? I don't know. But as far as it goes from the perspective of seeing it maybe on a federal level and maybe seeing some of it on a state level, the people saw what was happening and they wanted to bring that Republican conservatism back, and their outright trust of people with R behind their name was going under a little bit more scrutiny than it had been in the past. And I think that is why people have seen this groundswell of strong Republican conservative people running for these positions, because they know that, sometimes people talk a really good game, but they don't really follow through.
And that's a major impetus for this program. And like I said, getting to know the people behind the policy, because you really don't see anything about the policy or these bills, or unless you're really involved in that, which very few people are, you have no idea what is changing until it's changed. Right? You're kind of constantly living in the past, and the present is already gone before you know what's going on, at least from a common citizen level. There's not a lot of reporting on our media stations, as far as they're reporting the news, but they're not reporting what's happening and what you can do to affect some change in that beforehand. So it kind of serves for us to be that voice, to be that, hey, this is what's coming down the line. This is what's being talked about. And this is how you get involved to affect that change as a common citizen. I think no situation kind of exemplifies that better than, Representative Bethany Soy going to the Sioux Falls City Council meeting just a week or so ago, right? And showing that and getting the press and publicity that these things are, these things are happening, and right now it's literature in the public libraries and in the school libraries, but there's always something happening underneath the surface, and we need to kind of bring those things up into the light before it's just, oh, well, that's just the way that it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And transparency is probably one of the biggest things that all governments have struggled with. And, what can you say? What can you not say? But what you're bringing up as far as transparency from the perspective of this needs to be out there and not stymied by cherry picking what gets, exposed, such as your platform. I'm sure you are going to be bringing out a lot of these discussions, a lot of this background information that otherwise would not have been available through mainstream media to the citizens of South Dakota. So Bethany is just one example of what transparency is, and how those voices are not going to be, silenced. They need to be put out there. People's perspectives need to be understood, because when you don't know that something else is going on, or you're not aware of the information, how are you to make an informed decision?
Exactly. And that's kind of where I've sent, I know the Patriot Broadcasting and the Patriot Movement, a lot of people are going to associate that with some kind of far right movement, but I don't think that's what it is at all. No. I think it's a much more centered view of the world, and that we just want to have discussions again, and unfortunately, for people who identify as Democrats, that party was completely, taken over by, I'll call them communists, because that's what it was. And they only gave you one point of view that was accepted in the party. And I feel bad for a lot of people that got caught up in that, because now they have no party, essentially, right? And then you see that in a super party now that is the Republican Party in South Dakota. Like, yeah, we're all Republicans in name, but I voted yes on IM-29. I bet I was one of few Republicans who did that, right? Like, I have different views than you do, but where we align in our morals and in our values, I think that's where it really starts to bend in, and that, you know, government isn't just about economic policy. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of in South Dakota right now. Obviously, our Governor Kristi Noem, or soon to be ex-governor probably, with her new position in the federal government, you know, she was obviously all about economic growth. Paul Tenhaken in Sioux Falls, the same thing. They love the growth. They love to be the cool guy. You know, he's wearing his Jordans to the press conferences and everything. But what are you really doing to protect all the citizens of South Dakota? Growth at all costs doesn't seem like a very good policy to me. And while we align in the name that's, you know, or the letter that's beside your name in the, you know, in the chamber news or whatever, it doesn't mean that we agree on everything. And I think there needs to be open discussions, and you just don't get that anywhere.
I completely agree with that. And again, my platform was pretty much on that centeredness and more of government neutrality, more of government managing the assurances for the citizens that their rights are not going to be infringed, no matter what direction it's coming from. I grew up in a Democrat household. I called it my little JFK Democrat household. And many of my family members are Democrat, and I love them fiercely. Do we agree on everything? No. But I have also heard from them that they felt that they were being guided a certain way with how their party wanted them to vote. And so I just felt like I was a good representation of, you know, more of a central view of that, and just bring a little bit of sense and sensibility back to Pierre.
Well, I just love it. I think that's a great point to jump off here for today. I thank you so much for jumping on with me and taking a chance on, you know, I'm just a guy in his garage with a microphone. Right. But I love having good conversations. I love getting to know people. And then I like to know that those people that I know are out there doing the things that are affecting all of our lives here, and having that access. So when something big does happen and I have questions, that I can reach out to you, and I can reach out to women like Tessa as well, and go, hey, what's really going on here? So that I can deliver that to our people and to provide some comfort, right? Some information and some, you know, a little bit of maybe levity to the situations at hand. So, Bobby, I just want to thank you so much for jumping on. Why don't you go ahead and tell the people where they can get a hold of you, people in your district, and just South Dakotans at large?
Absolutely. You can get a hold of me at Bobbi Andera for house .proton.me or at proton.me. And then also you can go to the public email as well. I've got a website. I will possibly be on X as well. I don't know just yet, but that's part of kind of my movement of transparency as well. So more to come on that, more to come. Again, Bobbi Andera for house at proton.me.
Excellent, Bobby. Well, we look forward to having you back on the show anytime you got news to share. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Okay. Thanks, Bubba.
Thank you for tuning in to South Dakota Patriot Broadcasting. You can get more content and news at sdpatriotbroadcasting.com. The following program is part of the Patriot Broadcasting Project, brought to you by the Scene Projects Podcast Network.